Let's talk about Joe Mazzulla because some analysts out there are giving him a little bit of disrespect, and that's the last thing I want here on Celtics Today by Chat Sports. If you guys love Joe Mazzulla, and even better, if you think Joe Mazzulla is a top 5 coach in the NBA, go on ahead, like this video for me because that's exactly what we're going to talk about. So let's go on ahead and get into it. Joe Mazzulla, not even a top 10 coach according to CBS Sports. They just recently released their rankings, top 30 NBA coaches, and Joe Mazzulla flat out got disrespected. Not even in the top 10, despite just leading his team to the NBA Finals and winning the Larry O'Brien Trophy. There is no respect for Joe Mazzulla in this rankings. And we're going to break down why CBS decided to snub Joe Mazzulla and what he could do to possibly crack the top 10, maybe even the top 5 this upcoming season. But first, let's go through 21 to 30. Let's talk about the bottom rankings here. Naturally, JJ Redick, because you don't know shit about him yet, he's going to be ranked number 30. And then, of course, the Wizards, the Hornets, just really have been struggling recently. But Charles Lee was actually Joe Mazzulla's assistant coach this last year. He was recently awarded the head coaching position with Charlotte. So I do hope success in Charlotte just because Charles Lee helped the Boston Celtics have a little bit of success as well. Then you got the Nets, the Raptors, the Blazers. Then you got Billy Donovan with the Bulls, which is unfortunate because I do think Billy Donovan can be a good coach, but the resources he's been dealt with Chicago, got Zach LaVine's injury, LaMelo Ball. Now you got DeMar DeRozan in Sacramento. There's a lot of moving parts there. J.B. Bickerstaff now with the Pistons. They've had several coaches in the last couple of years. Doc Rivers, even being number 22 is surprising because he actually left coaching, then came back. And then I actually thought Kenny Atkinson of the Cavaliers is kind of low considering they went all the way to the second round of the playoffs this last year. But they've got a good roster, but is Kenny Atkinson the man for the job? But here's where it gets spicy. Of course, you got Willie Green with the Pelicans. I actually really do like Willie Green. I do think they've been dealt with some injuries, and of course, Zion being up and down on the injury list, not on the injury list since coming into the league. I do like Willie Green. Jason Kidd played against Joe Mazzulla and the Celtics in the finals with the Mavericks, and he's listed at number 18, right behind Taylor Jenkins, who did jack squat with the Grizzlies last season. Quinn Snyder with the Hawks, Michael Malone with the Nuggets. Then you got Greg Popovich, not even in the top 10 either. Popovich is one of the better coaches in the NBA, in my opinion, still active. Then you got Mike Brown. Then you got Chris Finch. And then look who's sitting right outside of the top 10 with Joe Mazzulla. That is blasphemy that Joe Mazzulla is at number 11. And we're going to break that down in just a few seconds, but I want to give you guys a quick little look here at what the top 10 coaches look like. We're going to break it down more so in the back half of the show, what the top 10 coaches have to offer here. Erik Spoelstra obviously being number 1 with the Heat. Nick Nurse and the Sixers, get past the second round of the playoffs, Nick Nurse, and then you can call Joe Mazzulla about how to win a championship. Ime Udoka, higher than Joe Mazzulla. And I know a lot of you guys wanted Ime Udoka to be back on the Boston Celtics before Joe Mazzulla really got to sink his feet in an offseason and a regular season. I do think Udoka is still a good coach, but is he better than Joe Mazzulla? Well, we're going to break that down here. Here's why CBS Sports had to say about Joe and why they ranked him number 11. Of course, there were paragraphs about Joe Mazzulla, but here's the quote that really stood out to me. We can't call him a great coach yet just because of his roster, but he did almost everything right in the context last season. So you're telling me Joe Mazzulla did pretty much everything right, but because he was handed a beautiful, perfect roster, you're going to snub him from a top 10? I mean, even if you give him the best resources possible, a coach can still screw it up. And that's exactly what Joe Mazzulla didn't do. So we're going to break down these 3 top reasons that CBS Sports says that Joe Mazzulla is not a top 10 coach. He relies on the 3 ball too much. He has a perfect roster. Boo-hoo, cry me a river. And then game management issues. So let's go to Joe Mazzulla ball real quick, because this is actually a new technique in Boston since Mazzulla has been the head coach for the last 2 years. They take a ton of 3-point shots. I like it, but sometimes it is a little bit too much. So I went back and I looked at the stats here, and there's a big difference from the Boston Celtics taking 3-point attempts per game, and then the Boston Celtics taking 2-point attempts per game. Well, they're ranked last in that section at 47.6%, and then they're ranked first in the NBA at taking the most three-pointers in a ball game at 42.5%. So there's a drastic difference from first to last in terms of who's shooting downtown and who's not. But something I thought was actually very interesting in the sense that there's only one Boston Celtic that averages the most three-point attempts in the top 20. And that's Jason Tatum, and he's sitting right there at number 11. So it's not like all starting 5 Boston Celtics players are crushing the top 10 and top 20 of just chucking threes up whenever they possibly can. There is an art to it. And there's a reason why Joe Mazzulla thought that this would be the best scheme for the Boston Celtics and the perfect roster that they have. The reason why Mazzulla ball was implemented for this roster specifically is because when you have so many sharp shooters on the Celtics roster, it allows double coverage. It allows defenders to go and completely harass Jason Tatum. But guess what? You just left Holiday wide open in the corner. You just left Al Horford wide open at the top of the three-point line. Jaylen Brown in the other corner. Joe Mazzulla does have the best roster, in my opinion, to be able to perform Mazzulla ball. But it's technique-wise. That's why I think Joe Mazzulla is just absolutely brilliant, because it's designed to draw double teams and make the defense work harder, knowing that we don't have just one sharp shooter from downtown on our team. We have 5 sharpshooters and more coming off the bench. But next I want to talk about why I think Joe Mazzulla has the perfect roster and why that can be a pro and a con. And I also want to talk about his game management issues. And then we're really going to break down who's in the top 10 and why Joe Mazzulla hasn't cracked that just yet, according to at least some NBA analysts over there at CBS Sports. But before I hop into that, I want to make sure that you guys get a chance to test your skills on the #1 daily fantasy sports app in America. I'm talking about PrizePicks. I play PrizePicks, honestly, a little bit more than I should. But how can you blame me when PrizePicks is so easy to play and it's so aesthetically pleasing? All you have to do is pick more or less on 2 to 6 player stat projections and watch the winnings roll in. You can also get in on daily action with your friends and become a PrizePicks community today. Here's the reason why I love PrizePicks is because I genuinely love testing my skills and going up against myself. And with over 5 million active members right now, and with NFL, you got a lot of football coming up. You got a lot of basketball as well, women's and men's starting up here very soon. And if you guys want to go on ahead and make your picks right now for Monday Night Football, well, here's what I have. I mainly like to go more, but sometimes I dabble in the less, which is exactly what I did here. But also, I ended up taking a Goblin. A Goblin is an easier pick. The payout just isn't as much. But if you see a red version of this, that's called a Demon. And that is a harder pick, but it pays a lot more. I got Saquon Barkley having more than 1 touchdown. I got Bijan Robinson having more than 1 touchdown. Devonta Smith more than 6 receptions. And I took Jalen Hurts less than 230 passing yards just because A.J. Brown is out. If you guys want to go ahead and get started, all you guys have to do is download the PrizePicks app, and you're going to use code CLNS for a $50 deposit when you play $5. You don't even need to win to get the $50. All you need to do is play $5, and if you use code CLNS, you'll get $50 guaranteed. PrizePicks, run your game. Let me ask you guys this question here real quick, because I think a lot of us know the answer. Does Boston have the best roster? I didn't even give you an option to say no. I just want you to like the video, because I think we're all in the agreement that the Celtics roster, pretty much 1 through 9, is absolutely lethal. You need every other team in the NBA to trade and to pick up players just to touch us, and it feels good being the champs. But is it the perfect roster that CBS Sports wants to portray? You got the New York Knicks, the Villanova Knicks, now having a pretty perfect roster. You've got the Memphis Grizzlies, who have had now 2 former Defensive Player of the Years on their roster, and Marcus Smart and Jaren Jackson Jr. You can use this for a lot of teams in the NBA, but let's take a look at the starting 5 here, shall we? And I put Al Horford in here, not Porzingis, because we're not sure when Porzingis is going to come back. But this is the perfect roster that Joe Mazzulla has to work with. And I'll be honest, I've seen shittier rosters that a coach has to work with. My God, you've got double-digit scoring on 4 out of 5 players. And even Al Horford, nearly averaging a double-double, and he's 38 years old. Horford, you got Holiday, who's also in his mid-30s. Derek White just turned 30. But then you got the Jays. You've got the 2 highest-paid NBA players on the same team that work just seamlessly together. And then you got Pritchard, who Joe Mazzulla has turned into a very good two-way guard. Sam Hauser, a catch-and-shoot three-pointing threat. You got O'Shea Brissett if he decides to return. You got Xavier Tillman, Luke Cornett. They really have figured out what works best in the Boston Celtics roster. But you also have to realize that this last year was Joe Mazzulla's first year as the head coach. Yes, he took over last year, but he also took over about a week or two before the regular season started because Ime Udoka decided to do my girl Nia Long dirty, and we all know how that ended. So now that you have Joe Mazzulla taking over Ime Udoka's roster last year, you can only do so much, in my opinion, as a head coach with what you want to do because they've already learned a different coaching style. But now I do think he has found the perfect rotations that fit this Boston Celtics roster. He's always got 2 starters on the floor, whether it be Jason Tatum and Derek White, you put Peyton Pritchard, Sam Hauser, and Al Horford in there. Or you flip it. You put Brown and Holiday, mix them in with Luke Cornett, Sam Hauser, Xavier Tillman. He has the perfect rotations that fit each player's strengths and weaknesses. But I will touch on the last point that CBS Sports made here. He does have some game management issues, and that's okay. Things can be better. Personally, when it comes to crunch time, kind of sucked last year. We weren't really sure who was going to take the last shot. We didn't really know who the outstanding player to drain it from anywhere other than Peyton Pritchard, who just decided to just start making half-court shots like nobody's business. The game management was a little bit tough. I would notice that he would take 45 seconds, not take a single shot. It was a little bit interesting, but he has room to improve, and that's okay. That's why he's not Erik Spoelstra. I think Erik Spoelstra is the king of all kings. But now we need to figure out why he's not in the top 10 and what he needs to do to get into the top 10, at least in the eyes of some NBA analysts. Because when you do take a look at that, and like I told you, we're going to really break down the top 10 list here because I think Erik Spo has set the standard very high for every NBA coach currently and for those to come. But Tom Thibodeau, to be on the New York Knicks, I think Tom pretty much, you could flip he and Joe Mazzulla, honestly, and kick Tom out of the top 10. I think Tom is the perfect coach for the roster that he was handed. I don't think he's very versatile in the sense that you know what you're getting with Tom. He's going to be an X's and O's type of player. Then you got Mike Budenholzer with the Suns, and obviously he led the Bucks a couple of years ago to the NBA Finals, but he's been fired the last couple of years. Ime Udoka, I personally do believe Ime is a better coach than Joe Mazzulla, but in different regards. Will Hardy with the Jazz. You got the OKC Thunder. Ty Lue with the Clippers. I do like Ty Lue, and I do respect him, but his track record in the last couple of years, yes, he's making the playoffs, but nothing seems to be coming out of it just yet, and now he's losing Paul George. Steve Kerr, are we serious right now? You think Steve Kerr is a top 5 coach in the NBA? Maybe back in 2016, maybe, but still, you've got Kevin Durant, Draymond Green, Klay Thompson, Andre Iguodala, you got Steph Curry, and that was 6-7 years ago. And now this most recent year, Steve Kerr is not a top 5 coach in the NBA. Then you got Rick Carlisle, Nick Nurse, and Erik Spoelstra. I do believe Joe Mazzulla could be among several of those coaches that I just listed. But all this is doing is putting another target, or as Joe Mazzulla said, we don't want the target on our backs. We want the target dead smack in the middle of our forehead, right in between our eyes, meaning we want to see everybody that we take down. And this is just adding another chip on the shoulder of the Boston Celtics, who just won the NBA Finals. So now I will ask you guys, am I just completely blowing this out of the water, and it may be September, and I may be looking for things to talk about, but where does Mazzulla rank in your top 30 NBA coaches? Let me know. Be realistic. And let me know in the comment section down below. And as always, hit that sub button for me if you guys have not on Celtics Today by Chat Sports.